mode. And this is still not the most important change that we're witnessing this year. Global economy is witnessing a significant decline because of a lockdown and other associated measures. The development of supply chains, the offers have dropped, the personal incomes have dropped, the economies of the member states, which account for 30% of the world territory and 43% of the global population, have responded in different ways to the challenges of the pandemic. South Africa and India, the annual GDP drop is forecasted at 8 to 9%. Russia and Brazil will show rather moderate decline compared and in the order of the same of the developed countries. Russia about 4%, Brazil about 5% of GDP, while the developed countries will show about 6.5% decline. While the most successful transitions shown by the PRC, by China, it's the only economy that will show the positive trend as a result of the year with a growth of about 2%. And because of that, in 2020, the general decline of the BRICS countries will not exceed 2% total. So the economic crisis faced by all the economies have shown a critical role of national and multilateral development banks in meeting the challenges of overcoming the pandemic results. The new program adopted by the Development Bank, amounting to $10 billion is yet another proof of that. Another problem is sustainable development of the sustainable growth of so-called global debt. The total debt of the corporate and private borrowers and the households have achieved a level of which they have coined a term for it, the fourth debt wave. So our objective is to track those trends and to take the response measures on time. And one of the measures of that kind is the active application of national currencies. In this, definitely the situation in national economies could be much more grave if the national governments have not taken anti-crisis measures timely. We as development banks have played our role and made our contribution. All of our organizations have their own experiences in facing the pandemic results and countering that. Let me tell you the steps taken by the VEB, Web of Russia. The government has given us the objective of resolving the issues and challenges of the COVID-19 challenges, like offering credits to support employment in the industries that suffered most, and the beneficial crediting of SMEs, credits to support the turnover, the working capital of the critical enterprises of the country. So the overall obligations undertaken by the Web Bank with entrepreneurs with the zero or negative interest rate, about 500 billion rubles. In SMEs, that's about 5 million people have retained their jobs, while their families have retained their standards of life. So the main objective of the VAB Bank is to implement the projects of the national development goals with a complex effect on the economy, society, cities, the environment. So in the COVID pandemic times, WEB has never suspended any financing project. And among those projects are gas processing in Leningradskaya region, St. Petersburg region, Russian Far East, building new tanker ships at the Zvezda shipbuilding enterprise, and then also producing power from communal refuse in Russian region and Tatarstan, new motorways. All that contributes to the development of Russian economy, even in today's complicated conditions. So for us, one of the objectives is a complex development of the cities, which account for 75% of the Russian population. So we're investing not only in the modern enterprises, but also the standards of lives of families. That is modern buses, electric trains, railway cars, new schools, highways, social and medical centers, hotels, hostels, new recreational areas, updating and upgrading the cities in the place of older, decrepit industrial districts. Our countries will overcome the crisis next year, we're sure of that, but using different tempos. It will depend on the size of the government debt and the deficiencies of the budgets, and that will define the capabilities of the countries to implement the anti-crisis measures. According to the Web Institution estimates, the total growth of the BRICS countries in 2021 will amount to about 6 to 7% total, and that will be the main contribution to the restoration of the world economy as a whole. So 5 national development banks of the member states and the NDB, New Development Bank, will define the quality of this restoration process. So resolving this objective it was one of the main objectives of the Russian chairmanship within the interbank cooperation of the BRICS member states. Let me dwell on some directions of mutual interest within that. First is the green financing projects. The BRICS countries account for the main area of exhaust and greenhouse effects, so that every of the nations is facing higher efficiency challenges, clean potable water, switch over to clean power production, sustainable growth within climate change. So to achieve those objectives, each of the member states have developed its own green finance mechanisms. In 2020, the VEB of Russia have started the preparation of the national standard of green financing within Russia. We approved the methodological recommendations in green financing and the main guidelines to implement the green projects in Russia. We're quite sure that our member states will create some common infrastructure of such a system, relying on the best achievements, and will set specific best practices to be used. The second area is a private-to-government partnership. In Rio de Janeiro, we have joined the agreement on the attracting private investments in infrastructure projects within the interbank cooperation mechanism. VEB Bank, our bank, has accumulated serious experience of state-to-private cooperation projects. We act as a consultancy to Russian regions to structure such projects. We believe that the unique and unified standard projects for the BRICS member states will help to elaborate common approaches to set the targets and prospects and structure the participation of the national banks in the implementation. They will allow to bring the national policies of infrastructure development closer together to increase the volume of attracted private capital to implement the state-to-private partnership projects. Last but not the least, one of the main results of the Russian chairmanship will be a memorandum on the responsible financing principles. So I'm sure that when this session will be closed, we'll be able to sign this document. It contains 8 principles and will allow our organizations to put incentives for quality investments with a positive social, environmental, and economic effects for the society. Also to promote practices of responsible behavior, principles based off international OECD principles, UN principles, World Bank principles, and created with the support of a Russian Presidential Academy, or the other word for it, RENIPA Academy, under the Russian government. Our acknowledgement to our Indian partners who wish to continue working on the recommendations of the EIB within the framework of their coming chairmanship in 2021. So EIB is prepared to offer all the necessary support in this issue. So dear colleagues, despite the 2020 being a year of serious challenges, trials and tests, we have managed to implement the goals that we have set forward. So I believe our cooperation within the mechanism of the interbank cooperation was a success. And I'm sure that the next year under the Indian chairmanship, we will achieve even more results, serious results. Now, let me, covering the issues that I've touched, to let my representatives of the VIB Bank to inform you so that the other representatives will also have a chance to speak. So the issue of responsible green financing, I'm asking Mr. Miroshnichenko, and he's the head of this methodological effort in Russia, within the Russian Federation. So the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for an honor to speak to you today. In spring, in one of our BRICS and SHOS meetings, we have introduced our project on creating a national framework for green finance. The purpose of this undertaking is to create a joint understanding of what the green finance is. One of the reasons why we decided to develop a national taxonomy is to make a basis for state support for green projects. To illustrate our serious attitude towards environment issues, we should say that we have decreased the emissions of CO2 by 27% over the last 30 years. Right now, all initiatives related to ecology and green projects are merged in Russia in a big national project ecology with a significant budget. And thus, we have to develop a national standard which would help to determine what is green and deserves appropriate state support, and what should be developed as solely commercial enterprise. Obviously, we have relied significantly on existing experience of other countries, including the Chinese taxonomy, that we estimate as a very good and strong document, which we hope we managed to look like. We would be happy to present our taxonomy and drafts of our standard. Those have been approved in VEB, and those have already been used to issue one green bond issue of Russian Railways, which was certified to be green according to international ICMA taxonomy and according to VEB taxonomy. So we will be happy to introduce the result of our work, the taxonomy, for review and discussion of international experts and of BRICS and SHOS experts. And we would be very happy to receive feedbacks. We will be happy to make joint projects, and we will be happy to see international experts in our expert council on green finance in VEB. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexei. The projects of state and private partnership. A few words coming from Madam Yerchevskaya.
Thank you very much. And dear colleagues, good afternoon. In 2020, under the Russian presidency, BRICS national development banks developed a high-level milestones for the P project preparation. The discussion of the draft of milestones took place with Private Investment Mobilization Working Group, and all comments of our BRICS partners were successfully integrated. The project preparation milestones have been prepared to serve as recommendations for development and implementation of P project to maximize its positive effect on the economy and quality of living. And I would like to express my gratitude to all BRICS national development banks who took part in the preparation of milestones for their input and cooperation. And I believe that it's our effort to help to harmonize national infrastructure development practices and to improve the quality of P projects. Also, I would like to give you a perception about the progress what was made under the Russian presidency on finance track with finance ministers with support of WebRF. This year, we have worked and started a work dedicated to the development of an integrated digital platform to encourage infrastructure investments in the BRICS countries. And this work will allow us to collect different data, including infrastructure investment proposals, available public supportive measures, and regulatory environment in the BRICS countries. And working together this year in this agenda, we have achieved a significant progress. First, the roadmap for the development of an integrated digital platform was elaborated and after approved by finance deputies. The second, based on the country's feedback, the technical report named the digital platforms to encourage infrastructure investments in the BRICS countries was prepared and also approved by finance deputies. Then the draft BRICS data exchange standard was circulated and reviewed all BRICS countries. And further, the concept note of the development of an integrated digital platform was drafted and presented at the second PPP BRICS Task Force meeting. All these deliverables have already gone through several rounds of negotiations and have been updated based on the country's feedback. Last Monday, on 9th November, all these results were endorsed by finance ministers of BRICS. And it's very important to start and carry out of the development of integrated digital platform in close cooperation with the new development bank. In 2021, the digital solution is to be developed and put into test operation. The prospect digital platform is to consist several functional modules, which would operate it based on the approved digital exchange data standard, including base of project initiatives, investment passport of countries and analytics, partner base, and news module. It is supposed that the platform target audience should be as broad as possible and should include institutional investors, infrastructure companies, multilateral and national development banks, and other stakeholders. In conclusion, we believe that the development of an integrated digital platform will allow us to fulfill several crucial goals, which are to facilitate well-informed investment digital decision-making, mobilize private infrastructure investments, and ensure automatic and regular exchange of data. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm passing the floor back to Igor Shuvalov.
Thank you very much, Svetlana. And the last presentation on behalf of the BRF, I would like to give floor to Oleg Teplov, and he is in charge of innovations. Thank you very much, Mr. Shuvalov, and I'm happy to welcome you from the Skolkovo Center. This is the Center of Innovations, and we've created a glass room some time ago, and it's the room that is used for online training to study new technologies and to conduct such big and important meetings such as this one. I must say that 2020 has been a year of very serious challenges, both for new technologies and innovations. And of course, COVID-19 pandemic had a significant impact on the activity of development banks and interaction between these banks. This has been affected as well. We've been working together with our colleagues during the year. We've been developing plans. How can we implement innovations? How can we introduce them best? And what can be done with blockchain and innovations? So in 2020, together with our colleagues, we have developed a 5-year plan for 2 working groups, innovations and blockchain groups. Why did we do this? Because whatever is being developed or discussed in these groups, these topics are very close, and we wanted to prove that the synergy can be achieved through interaction and cooperation. And as for joint projects, will be much more efficient. So it's a 5-year plan, and every country during its presidency and chairmanship in BRICS would be able to apply its experience and monitor implementation of this plan. Also, our 5-year plan has been agreed and developed within the framework of the BRICS development program till 2025, and it meets key strict criteria. The strategy has been approved in May 2020. So the joint plan for both of the groups includes several priority areas. And the two groups are going to work together. This will help us find answers for some burning issues that we have. For example, how can we capture the potential of fintech, digitalization, what can be done during the pandemic? And we can also achieve some growth and collaboration. This plan also includes joint financial tools, and we pay special attention to those projects who are no startups anymore, that they have that projects that have become much more than that. And we'd be able to implement and introduce new products, new solutions. We've been working during the lockdown, and I would like to thank my colleagues for their hard work. We started another process, the second stage, in June, and later on we have presented the final version of this plan. But we haven't stopped there. We'll continue working till the end of this year and further on. So thank you very much. And Mr. Shuvalov, over to you. Thank you. Thank you, Oleg. So this was introduction, and now I suggest we start the discussion, and let me welcome Mr. Marcos Prado Trejo. Welcome. I know that it has been very difficult for you. You had to chair the whole organization. So I'm sure that all development banks are very much interested in an accelerated development and would be happy to work together with you on new projects. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman Shuvalov. Hello to everyone. I am honored to address the BRICS Interbank Cooperation Mechanism for the first time as president of the new development bank. Let me start by the projects the NDB is supporting so that our members can both tackle the COVID-19 pandemic and boost economic recovery. COVID-19, as it has been said, brings about unparalleled challenges, but the NDB is rising up to the occasion. A major share of our human and financial resources is devoted to rapid and flexible responses. That makes us a proactive and agile partner. $10 billion is our committed support through the Emergency Assistance COVID-19 Response Program, which has two phases. The first $5 billion are designed to finance health and social relief, and the second $5 billion are targeted at supporting economic recovery. The board of directors of the new development bank has already approved 4 COVID-19 emergency program loans to Brazil, India, China, and South Africa, totaling $4 billion. We have also received a request of $1 billion from Russia, and our staff is working diligently on its approval. The bank thus contributes to the ongoing efforts of our BRICS countries in facing up to the health and economic consequences of COVID. In Brazil, these resources provided by the NDB will help safeguard the income of individuals and families in vulnerable situations, including informal, self-employed, and unemployed workers, thus facilitating access to food and health-related goods. In India, the NDB's scope of financing includes the expansion of healthcare capacity and emergency response across the board. In China, the NDB helped finance unexpected public health expenditures in provinces that were hit the hardest by COVID, thus reducing the loss For the second phase, the NDB is working at full speed on supporting economic recovery. And the scope of that program includes enhanced credit access to small and medium-sized companies, rural infrastructure to facilitate economic activity and job creation, the restoration of production capacity in key sectors adversely affected by the pandemic, and boosting early economic recovery by financing key infrastructure projects. When it comes to fundraising, the NDB is also making substantial progress. We have successfully tapped international markets to issue our inaugural US dollar bond of 1.5 billion in June and another $2 billion in September. These bonds are funding the emergency assistance response. Efforts to support our members in the challenges posed by COVID take place as the NDB counts 5 years since its foundations. And this has been a time of remarkable achievements. We're talking, after all, about 65 projects. The NDB loan book now stands at $21 billion. And by the end of this year, we expect approvals to reach $26 billion. We are supporting key infrastructure projects. We are addressing our country's core development needs. We are contributing to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals: transportation, urban development, sanitation, energy, social infrastructure are all areas within our scope. Now, let me tell you about our vision going forward. We have 5 top priorities for the next 5 years. 1, we want to position the new development bank as the premier multilateral development institution for emerging economies. And we will play a leading role in the conversation of what development policymaking means in the 21st century. The NDB will be all the more successful in that endeavor if it can count on the experience and expertise of national development banks. That is why we look forward to enhancing our collaboration as our activities expand and diversify. 2, we will make progress in membership expansion. This will be done in a gradual and responsible way so as to allow for the increased outreach of the bank. 3, we will enhance the complexity and outreach of our operations, as the very concept of infrastructure is in constant evolution, and it now encompasses both traditional challenges and those that are presented by the 4th industrial revolution. That is why we welcome the initiative of a digital platform to encourage infrastructure investment, which has been discussed during the last meeting of the BRICS finance ministers and central bank governors. Crowding in infrastructure investment is an essential objective in today's world, and a digital platform can definitely help us attain that goal. We are enthusiastic about the platform and committed to reviewing how best the NDB can support its development and implementation. 4, as human talent rises to be a key factor of production, the NDB must become a talent-intensive institution, one that is able to cope with this connection. I, President of National Development Bank, that we should increase the exchange flow of talented professionals involving all of our institutions. I am sure this will prove a most productive tool. 5, and finally, Mr. Chairman, we will strengthen the role of the new development bank as a platform for international cooperation, one in which member countries can come together and work constructively on issues where they share interests. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Thank you. Actually, it was very informative, very interesting. And on behalf of the BRF, let me express my support. I know that the new development bank has a rep office in the Russian Federation, and I know that you intend to give loans in Russian rubles, project related, and we're very much interested. And despite the pandemic, I really hope that we'd be able to continue our cooperation and fund projects. Once again, let me express my gratitude for sharing this information, and welcome to the Russian Federation anytime. Thank you. So, dear colleagues, I would now like to give floor to our next speaker, to Mr. Weiyang Yongming, President of China Development Bank. Chairman Shuvalov, dear colleagues, good afternoon. I'm really happy to take part in this video conference, and on behalf of the Chinese Development Bank, I would like to express my gratitude to the chairman of the BRF and to all the participants. For 10 years, we've been working together. This mechanism proved to be very successful. This year has been a special one. We've been faced with a pandemic, and this pandemic has hit hard all of our countries. As for trade and economy are in decline. People are faced with a lot of challenges. But I think that we need to join forces and face these challenges. We need to win this war. And as for our bank, is playing a great role in the first three quarters. We have ensured stable growth, and Mr. Shuvalov has already mentioned that. And analysts say that we have successfully implemented a number of measures and provided guarantees to a lot of companies. We have improved financial services. We have improved acquisition and procurement of PPEs and other necessary commodities. And we supported those companies and organizations who were in need of it most. And we've ensured most favorable climate. And our bank was one of the first ones who started supporting Chinese companies. We have two lines for special loans to help our companies overcome difficult times. We have provided 450 billion Chinese yuans, and beneficiaries amounted to over 1,000 of companies. We allowed companies to extend loans, reduce interest rates, and we supported small and medium enterprises. We supported different industries. We've arranged special conditions for certain industries and companies, and this has helped us to support the first line of defense. Organizations and companies working in Hubei province, and those provinces who were hit hardest were supported by us. We provided PPEs, and we provided all the necessary goods to those provinces and regions who needed them the most. And I would like to express my gratitude to those partners who supported and helped us in those difficult times. So this pandemic has taught us that man and nature are very close. And presently, we are talking about green and sustainable development. That is why we need to change, we need to adjust, we need to transform and find answers to most burning issues. And quite recently, there was a government meeting that has discussed the plan for the next 5 years. That includes green development. And our bank is The first one, to work with green development. For 4 quarters of this year, we've been working hard and we've issued green bonds for the amount of 45 billion Chinese yuan. And we have issued credits for 2.3 trillion of Chinese yuan. So we are almost number one in China. We have methods and model for green development. And over the recent years, we know that there's been a plan to develop tools for green development, and we have developed recommendations, and those recommendations have been discussed widely. And I think this is a good starting point for joint cooperation. We also have several proposals. Proposal number one, of course, we need to continue working on green development, and we need to have consensus on that because our banks represent our countries, and this is the main financial driving force that helps our governments implement our goals. And we need to continue developing green technologies, and we need to work closer with governments and surveillance bodies in order to improve the structure of green development, improve the environment for further development. And we need to make our development healthier. Point number two, we also need to look at preferences and benefits. We need to support green development. Our bank considers this to be one of its priorities. We are taking into account social support. That is one of the most important items on our agenda. We also need to improve the financial service. We need to improve quality, introduce new methods and models. And judging from what we see in our country and in other countries, looking at different industries and areas, we need to look for new areas where we can improve what we have. And we need to look for new markets. We need to support green environmental development. We need to support our governments. Next item, next proposal. We've been developing different tools and we've accumulated substantial experience. Looking into the future, we need to be practical. We need to think what models, tools we have, how can we complement each other, and how can we work together closer.
This pandemic, despite all the facts, will not suspend our movement ahead. So our BRICS member states will continue to deepen even further and to perfect the mechanisms of interbank cooperation. So today, being on threshold of the second decade of our cooperation, we might join forces, go hand in hand, and to strike back to the pandemic and to achieve faster and qualitative restoration of the economy, and thus make the foundations for the nice future of our BRICS member states. Thank you, esteemed Mr. Wemin. Oh, Jan, green financing for all of us and for the NDB and the national banks is today probably a topic which is in high demand, and we will carefully study your experience and the experiences of other members, and as a whole, the value very much the relationships that we have established, and that includes the National Bank of China. Now, let me offer the floor to the president of the Brazilian Development Bank, Mr. Gustavo Montezano, on the principles of developing the state and private partnership projects within the economies. We have joined this document that have been originally developed in Brazil, and it is called the uh, Rio de Janeiro Protocol. Please, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Under your name, I'd like to send my sincere regards to all members of this meeting. It's a pleasure to be meeting again with all the BRIC members. Although virtually, we're keeping our team together, and that's the most important message under this meeting. And again, I hope we can meet in person next year. I would like to make a speech here, Mr. Chairman, into three topics. I would like to comment first BNDES actions during the COVID crisis. I would like to speak then about our BRICS cooperation, how relevant is this, and some topics that I would like to highlight. And finally, I would like to speak about the new infrastructure, the future infrastructure. Starting with the actions that BNDES took during the crisis, as was mentioned here by the Chinese and Russian banks, we took, I would say, a similar action. We were a critical agent for the Brazilian government to succeed economically into the crisis. We mobilized roughly $24 billion between companies and states, municipalities and regional states in Brazil. Our main priority were the SMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises. We supported more than 260,000 companies, which holds indirectly roughly 8 million jobs. During this crisis, during these last 6 months, we had a very innovative and creating new products, launching new initiatives. And we are quite sure that these initiatives, those new products, somehow they will stay in Brazil. So the war, the crisis also brings creation, brings new technology, brings innovation. We also help states and municipalities in Brazil with postponing our loans with those entities over roughly $1 billion. And we also support our healthcare systems and with 3,000 hospital beds and 4 million COVID diagnosis tests, and also medical equipments to support our heroes, our doctors and our nurses that were really the heroes under this war. Overall, we think that BNDES, all the public banks, the Brazilian government, we did a nice and very useful job for our population during this crisis. Those are not happy times, although we were able to mitigate the damage. And again, proving the relevance and the need of being agile, of being speed, and to innovate as a public entity. Moving to my second point about the relevance of the BRICS cooperation. And again, I will reinforce the needs of innovation. The world's changing. The social needs are changing. Environmental is changing. Technology is changing as fast as we never thought before. That's why we, DFIs, we also need to adapt. We also need to change. We also need to move forward and be agile. But that's a good thing for the DFIs, because the change that are winding in our world, they are pushing banks, they're pushing companies, they're pushing private players to think on social and environmental benefits. And that's our job. That's why we are all founded here, to improve the social, the quality of life of our citizens, to protect the environment in our countries, and to develop our economies. Since now, private banks, private companies are also looking forward in order to those goals, they are more than welcome. And that's why we as the BRIC banks, we should lead them. We should work together and creating those new tools creating this new market, creating this new taxonomy. And I would like to highlight the last one. Agreeing on new taxonomy for non-financial impacts on social and environmental goals is critical. The more we work closely as emerging market banks that we have our reality, which is different from the developed world, the more we work closely on the taxonomy of pricing and measuring the social and environmental impacts, better will be our job, and more private capital and more market we can capitalize to those projects. That's why I like to highlight the principles for responsible investment that we signed. It's a clear statement and one very good example of what we should work together and move and push forward our markets and the private players. Working groups that were also mentioned here by our chairman, they are very, very well welcome from a BNDES perspective. Understanding what you're doing, understand your visions, understand your opportunities, they have been very critical for our business plan. And the more we exchange, either through digital platform, either through collective planning, the more we can lead all this ESG agenda that's here to stay in all financial markets. Finally, lastly, I would like to speak about infrastructure, or the future, the new infrastructure. It's clear today, at least in Brazil, and I think it's not different elsewhere. We have enough funding. There is enough funding globally. The main challenging, the main bottleneck are good projects, well prepared, well molded, with good regulation, and also well structured with different potential investors. That's why we cooperating in order to establish the best quality of planning, the best methods, and prepare good projects under all ESG conditions. And the best practice will make our countries grow with infrastructure and investments. Since last year, for the last 18 months, we have put in place a Brazilian investment bank for the state. We provide service to ministers and regional states in Brazil, preparing projects and helping our clients, the Brazilian government, to find assets, to find opportunities, and to prepare and bring those opportunities to the market. For the last 18 months, we're able to put up a pipeline of roughly 80 projects. And we think that up to the end of the year, this will move north of 100 projects. We're speaking of roughly 200 billion reais, or $37 billion of capex embedded on those projects, between ports, roads, privatizations, water and sanitations, power companies, forests and parks, all kinds of natures and sectors that you can imagine. Pursuing these new trends, changing the way we operate, changing the way we work as DFI, but keeping us closed, keeping us working together, and preparing our countries, preparing this market for the new future. We think that we are coming into the year of the DFIs. We, more than ever, will have a relevant role in the world, both nationally and globally. And working together and moving forward, changing and thinking on social and environmental aspects, I'm quite convinced that we'll deliver that to our societies. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, dear President. We are carefully following the developments in your agenda, how BNDES is developing the economic agenda. And our employees as responsible for developing strategies in line with your experts. They keep communicating and are following and tracking your KPI system evolution. And I have to say we fully support your statement of we should be well aware of very fast changes that we should be following and tracking, and that it should be taking a leading role in these changes. So we fully support this statement. That is of critical importance. And in this context, our cooperation under the coordinating and guiding role of the NDB, we could be of great help to each other within this agenda. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was very informative. And coming up next, South Africa Development Bank, Mr. Yenoha Godongwana.
Thank you very much, Chairman, presidents of the various banks and CEOs, member bank delegates, guests and colleagues. Firstly, allow me to thank our host and presiding chair of the BRICS Inter-Bank Cooperation Mechanism, Mr. Shuvalov, and his team for their determination to further our cooperation and for driving forward our efforts during these very difficult times. Our respective teams have had extensive virtual engagements in the run-up to this event, and the deepening of cooperation that has been explored and in some instances already achieved is most encouraging. Let me touch briefly on the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on our economy before expanding on the expected and intended role of the Development Bank of South Africa in shaping its recovery. To counter the spread of the virus, South Africa went into a hard lockdown as early as the 26th of March. On the 27th of March, Moody's downgraded the sovereign credit rating. This triggered South Africa's exit from the FTSE World Government Bond Index, which saw bond yields spike as investors tracking the index were forced to sell off their South African government bond holdings. As expected, the currency followed, with the rand dropping some 25% to an all-time low against the US dollar. Our domestic debt capital markets completely dislocated, coming to an almost total shutdown. Our central bank, however, responded quickly, though, cutting the benchmark bank repo rate by 200 basis points, followed by a further 100 basis points shortly thereafter, while simultaneously embarking on a government bond buyback program. While this stemmed the rise and in fact saw a rapid drop in bond yields back to pre-COVID levels, the impact of the lockdown on the economy was always going to be substantial. Our National Treasury in turn announced a COVID response package equivalent to 10% of GDP to provide short-term relief from the impact of the pandemic and the lockdown, forced to curtail its spread. Still, the impact was shattering. Gross fixed capital formation contracted by 59.9% year on year. Real GDP contracted by 16.4% in Q2 2020, falling on Q1, which contracted on 1.8. Our finance minister expects the economy to contract by 7.8% in 2028, returning to real GDP growth of 3% by 2021 from this low base. Even before this pandemic wreaked its havoc, accelerated infrastructure development had already formed one of the key pillars of our president's economic stimulus plan. Now, following the devastation sought by the COVID-19, it has been further elevated as the principal driver of our country's economic reconstruction and recovery plan. The IMF in October 2020 fiscal monitor estimates that a 1% of GDP increase in public investment has the potential to grow GDP by 2.7%, private investment by 10%, and most importantly, for a country like ours, where unemployment is rife, to create between 20 and 30 million jobs, directly and indirectly. It goes on to say that investment in health and education and in digital and green infrastructure can connect people, improve economic-wide productivity, and improve resilience to climate change and future pandemics. In this context, the DBSA has been recognized by our shareholder as a key player with critical role in shaping the recovery of our economy. The DBSA's response will be five-pronged. Firstly, with a mandate to finance infrastructure and economic development, the bank has always expected to play a lead part in the recovery effort. The DBSA's role has been further elevated, with our president tasking the bank with establishing and managing the country's infrastructure fund. This fund is being set up as a vehicle that will blend government funding with debt capital from the private sector, global DFIs, and other sources to drive and accelerate the development of critical economic and social infrastructure, with a target to unlock investment equivalent to close on 25% of GDP over the next 5 years. The fund's operation will run in parallel with the bank's direct on-balance sheet infrastructure financing operations, which will similarly be geared at driving economic recovery in South Africa and our broader region. Secondly, as proper project preparation and appropriate structuring and risk allocation is key to bringing projects to bankable stage. Government has also set aside funding to complement the DBSA's own resources committed to project preparation. The DBSA already boasts a renowned track record of successful project preparation, managing not only its own funds for this, but also regional fund as well as the European. Project preparation will therefore form a core element of the DBSA's response, giving its importance in unlocking development and ensuring project sustainability. The third component of the bank's contribution to economic recovery and linked to its project preparation and financing roles is that of project implementation. Through our infrastructure delivery division, the DBSA project manages the implementation of critical infrastructure for many of our government departments, hamstrung by capacity constraints. We expect demand for this service of the bank to increase commensurate with the increased infrastructure investment expected as part of the country's economic recovery program. The fourth prong for us will be for the bank to play a lead role in constructing just transition for our country, combining continuing investment that adds to the country's national determined contributions, or NDCs, under the Paris Agreement, with programs that simultaneously seek to accommodate those communities whose livelihoods are threatened by exit from fossil fuels, all to ensure that no one is left destitute. The fifth and last prong, with DBSA the largest single lender to municipalities in South Africa, the bank is spearheading the implementation of the country's district delivery model. The district delivery model is a resolute collaboration aimed at securing maximum coordination across all spheres of government, national, provincial, local, in partnership with business, society, and labor to integrate development planning and execution. It's designed with the primary purpose to remove bottlenecks and obstacles to development and to fast-track improved service delivery. Now I want to touch briefly on one of the areas previously identified for increased cooperation between and amongst our ICM member institutions, namely innovation and blockchain. This is appropriate for us from two perspectives. One, the DBSA has identified innovation as a key to ensure that the bank and its core client base are future-proof, and specifically technology innovation at the pace it's happening in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution is likely to shape infrastructure development at all levels. And two, because cooperation in the area of blockchain or distributed ledger technology was in fact initiated by the DBSA when it hosted the ICM in 2018. Unfortunately, we've not as yet, as an institution, made the strides we had hoped to make at the time. I'm encouraged, however, by the efforts put in by all members institutions since to explore and identify specific areas for enhanced cooperation in this area, both under the chairmanship of BNDS last year, and very importantly, continuation with the renewed vigor of those efforts this year under the chairmanship of our colleagues in Russia. This year, our teams have had numerous engagement, and specifically our working groups in innovation and blockchain have crafted a long-term joint action plan that will steer our cooperation and development efforts over the next 5 years. The focus of the joint actions plan will be centered on a number of key themes, including, among others, new investment mechanism solution, new instruments for supporting SMEs, new knowledge exchange and network platform for SMEs in innovation and blockchain and research, new instrument for support of women entrepreneurs, new financial technologies, new digital solutions and cutting-edge technologies, including blockchain, AI, big data, 5G, and related ones. Specifically for this year, the aftermath of the devastation sought by COVID-19 pandemic, exploration of our innovation blockchain working groups will tend to technology as a source of solution for solving global economic challenges, combating economic downturn inflicted by a pandemic, smart cities as a source of economic growth. I specifically single out selected areas outlined for cooperation because these in particular lie close to the DBSA's vision to leverage technology and innovation broadly to accelerate development within its core focus areas. And I commend the work put into these programs under the leadership of our colleagues in Russia, and of course, the efforts and contributions of all our teams. We believe that harnessing technology and actively pursuing disruptive innovation will go a long way to addressing our challenges of poverty, inequality, and the DBSA is committed to this path. In this respect, we have, for example, established a product innovation unit at the bank and have set aside funds for high impact investment that leverage technology in enhancing service delivery, access to health and clean energy, food security, and the like. But let me stop here and thank all our member banks again for their collective efforts to continue to nurture and build our multinational partnership, and for their commitment to our common cause of enhancing and deepening cooperation for the benefit of all our people. And a special word of thanks again to our host, Mr. Shuvalov, and the broader team, and his broader team for all their work in coordinating and leading our efforts during this very difficult period. Thank you. I hand over back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Garangwano. That was very interesting. And once again, I see that even though we are located in different countries, we lead different new development banks, we might have slightly different agenda, but all of us, we still care about small and medium enterprises. We're interested in innovations and transformation of our cities. Thank you very much for your presentation. And now I would like to give floor to our final speaker, Managing Director of Export Import Bank of India, Mr. David Raskinia, and he is going to talk about Exim Bank measures for economy post-crisis recovery. David, over to you.
Thank you. Mr. Igor Shivalov, Chairman of the VEB, Mr. Gustavo Montesano, Chairman of the BNDES, Mr. Huyang Weimin, President of the China Development Bank, Mr. Enoch Dodongwana, Chairman of the Development Bank of Southern Africa, Mr. Marcos Prado Troyo, President of the New Development Bank, delegates from the various BRICS member development banks, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as the case may be, to all of you in different time zones. Here in India, we have just completed a long weekend celebrating the auspicious festival of lights known as Deepavali. And on this occasion, all of us in India would like to extend our heartiest greetings to you all for prosperity and good health in the year ahead. I'm delighted to be present here at this virtual gathering for the annual meeting of the BRICS Interbank Cooperation Mechanism, and I would like to thank VEB for extending its kind invitation to the Exim Bank to participate in the annual meeting of the BRICS Interbank Cooperation Mechanism. I would like to also compliment and thank our gracious hosts for the excellent efforts that they have taken to facilitate this meeting in spite of all the prevailing uncertainties and limitations that have been experienced. This year, ladies and gentlemen, has been quite unusual for all of us. And the fact that we are all meeting virtually today, even as we approach the fag end of this year, is a testimony to the seriousness and gravity of the disruptions that almost all economies are witnessing. This is something that none of us would have anticipated as recently as maybe 8 months ago. The priorities, you would recall, had been set under Russia's presidency of the BRICS Forum in early 2020, including strengthening multilateral principles in global politics, developing cooperation in trade, economy, and finance, and of course, cooperation in the cultural and humanitarian spheres. My colleagues and I at India Exim Bank would be delighted to continue to support and contribute towards strengthening the BRICS cooperation in line with the thrust and focus of the Government of India. In the above context, and in the wake of the current scenario of the global pandemic and the crisis that the world is witnessing today, it becomes imperative for us to share and learn from the best practices and measures that our respective national governments and member institutions of the ICM are taking to reboost and re-energize our economies out of this crisis. I would like to highlight briefly some of the key initiatives and measures in India that the Government of India, the central bank, that is the Reserve Bank of India, and the participatory institutions like the Exim Bank have taken over the last few months since the outbreak of the pandemic. Firstly, in order to cushion the economy from the blow of the coronavirus, the Government of India in May 2020 unveiled an economic package called the Atmanirbhar Bharat. This translates as Self-Reliant India, and this package is worth almost 10% of India's GDP. The underlying theme of this package is to have a self-reliant India by focusing on the need to manufacture in India at a quality that is good enough to be exported globally to any country. Out of this package, almost 38% was through the Reserve Bank of India's monetary policy announcements, and with a focus to ensure liquidity, mainly to the micro, small, and medium enterprises, which, as you would agree, bear the brunt of any financial crisis. Moreover, in order to increase the ambit of MSMEs in India and thereby enable them to enjoy the accruing benefits therefrom, the definition of MSMEs has been revised and widened. Not only internal but external trade as well. The Reserve Bank of India announced measures to support trade, such as an increase in the maximum permissible period of pre-shipment and post-shipment export credit, an extension in the time available for payment of imports into India, and importantly, an insurance or backstop liquidity facility for the Exim Bank of India through a line of credit of Indian rupees 150 billion for a period of 90 days with rollover up to 1 year to enable us to avail of a US dollar swap facility. This is only to be used in case of need, and so far we have not found it necessary to use it, but it is there in the event that we require it. Where MSMEs are concerned, there is already a restructuring facility for MSMEs which were in default, but standard loan accounts as on 1st of January 2020. This scheme has provided relief to a large number of MSMEs. With COVID-19 continuing to disrupt normal functioning and normal cash flows, the stress in the MSME sector in India has got accentuated, warranting further support. With the intent to facilitate the revival of real sector activities and mitigate the impact on the ultimate borrowers during this pandemic, the Reserve Bank announced the provision of a window under the Prudential Framework to enable lenders to implement a resolution plan in respect of eligible corporate exposures to enable all such eligible exposures to be classified as standard, subject of course to certain conditions. Further, in order to ease the financial stress, a 6-month moratorium on payment of installments of all term loans has been provided by all commercial banks and lending institutions, along with deferment of interest on working capital facilities for 6 months, among others. It was also decided to infuse additional liquidity of Indian rupees 100 billion to shield the housing sector from liquidity disruptions and to ameliorate the stress being faced by smaller non-bank finance companies and microfinance institutions in obtaining access to liquidity. As member development banks of the BRICS nations, it is highly advisable for all of us to continue to collaborate through an emphasis on innovation and sharing of expertise. While ideas are the first step towards transformation, collaboration among parties is imperative for effective action to take place. I am confident that the proposed signing of the MOU among the member development banks on the principles of responsible financing would definitely be a constructive measure in this direction. Coming to the second part of my address, as we all know, the BRICS development banks under this cooperation mechanism have constituted several working groups within the context of the broader framework of international collaboration. In the context of India's chairmanship of the BRICS Forum in 2016, and under Exim Bank's presidency of the BRICS Interbank Cooperation Mechanism, India Exim Bank instituted the BRICS Economic Research Award in March 2016. As you would all agree, strong, robust economic research has always been the basis for good, effective, and efficient policy formulation. The objective of the BRICS Economic Research Award is to stimulate and encourage advanced doctoral research on economics-related topics of contemporary relevance to the member nations of the BRICS. The award comprises a citation, a medal, and a prize money of Indian rupees 1.5 million, sponsored by the Exim Bank of India. The award accepts as entries doctoral theses written by nationals of any of the 5 member nations of the BRICS who have been awarded a doctorate or who have been accepted for award of a doctorate from any university or academic institution globally. The bank had disseminated the details of the award globally through advertisements in print and electronic media, with assistance from the overseas missions of the Government of India, missions of the BRICS nations in India, and of course, our member development institutions. The details of the award were also widely publicized in universities and research institutions globally. We especially thank the member development banks for their kind support and assistance extended to us in disseminating the details of the award and encouraging scholars from their countries to apply for the award. I'm especially happy to share that we had received an excellent response from scholars all over the world for this award, representing nationalities of all the 5 member nations of the BRICS. I'm particularly grateful to Mr. Shuvalov and the VEB for very kindly and readily consenting to our request to include the felicitation of the award winner in this important event of the Financial Forum. This continues a tradition set by us in India, taken forward in China, in Southern Africa, and in Brazil over the last 4 years. In order to select the award-winning thesis, the Exim Bank had constituted an award jury comprising eminent scholars of high repute, including Dr. Pulin Naik, former director and professor of the Delhi School of Economics, Dr. Andrei Klepak, the deputy chairman and chief economist of the VEB in Russia, and Dr. Rajat Acharya, professor and former head of the Department of Economics, Jadavpur University, Kolkata, India. I understand Dr. Klepak is also connected with us today, And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, Dr. Klepak, for your kind interest and for taking out time to evaluate the entries and participate in the jury meetings. I would also take this opportunity to thank VEB and Chairman Mr. Igor Shuvalov for nominating Dr. Klepak as a member of the award jury from Russia, making it a much more formal process for evaluating entries. After the conclusion of a rigorous evaluation process by the award jury, I am now delighted to announce that the winner of the BRICS Economic Research Award for 2020 is Dr. Adam Yao Liu. Dr. Liu is connected with us today, and I'm sure you can see him on the screen. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Liu. A few words of Dr. Liu. Dr. Liu is currently an assistant professor at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore. Dr. Liu, my heartiest congratulations to you for having won the Exim Bank's BRICS Research Economic Award for 2020. Dr. Liu received his doctoral degree in 2018 from the Stanford University, USA, for his doctoral dissertation on building markets within institutions, the political economy of banking development in China. I would now like to request my colleagues from VEBRF to kindly display the slides of the presentation showing the jury members, the certificate that we will be presenting, the cover page of the research study. Thereafter, I would like to request Dr. Adam Liu to briefly share some of his thoughts with us. Incidentally, for all the participants today, a copy of the award-winning publication may be freely downloaded from the Exim Bank's website at your convenience. With that, let me cease my talk. Once again, I would like to thank our most excellent hosts, the VEB Russia and President Shuvalov. We look forward to hopefully welcome you in person in India next year when things hopefully would be very different. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We really hope so too. So, do we actually have a technical possibility to connect to Dr. Liu and give floor to him? Is Dr. Liu online?
Oh, yes, I am
Dr.
online.
Liu, are you here?
I am online, but I'm not able to start my video because the host just disabled it. Okay, here we go.
Okay, we can see you. Excellent, thank you.
Great. Is it my turn now? Okay, thank you very much. That's very kind of you, David, for your kind words. And I want to start by thanking the VEBRF for giving me this opportunity to just say a few words about my work. And of course, I like to thank the Exim Bank of India and the entire award selection committee for choosing my dissertation as the winning entry this year. So my dissertation, in very general terms, studies how central local politics in China has been driving the transformation of the country's banking system during the reform era and the set of economic consequences of this transformation. As you all know, 40 years ago, China just had a few large state-owned banks, but now the number of commercial banks in the country has gone up from less than 10 to well over 2,000. This is a puzzling development because foreign and private entry to the system is still very much limited. Of course, the quick and dirty answer to this question is that a lot of these new financial institutions were initiated and organized by lower level governments in China. But that still begs the question, why did the central state allow for this? But I don't want to talk about the politics of this today because that's going to come out in my book later so that people will still be interested in buying and reading my book. What I do wish to highlight today is one particular methodological innovation that I made during the research process, which I think will be very much interesting and useful for scholars and policymakers alike who wish to study China's banking system as well as other countries' banking system. The biggest challenge for studying the Chinese banking system in a scientifically rigorous fashion is the lack of systematic, reliable, subnational data. And to get around this challenge, what I did is that I painstakingly collected the business registration license of every single bank branch that was ever built in China during the reform era, which is well over 200,000. Because on that piece of paper, we have the precise location, opening date, as well as ownership information of every single bank branch. And combining that information with the bank closure information that is available from the PBOC, the Chinese Central Bank, we can literally map out the evolution of the Chinese banking system for every single locality down to the street level. And with this super cool spatial data set, we can combine this with existing industry census data, private firm survey data, and so on and so forth to start answering a set of questions that were not answerable previously. For example, with this, I find that increasing competition in the Chinese banking system has really facilitated private SMEs access to finance, which is contrary to the conventional wisdom out there. It has even helped harden the budget constraint of a lot of unproductive local SOEs. But of course, large central SOEs and their local subsidiaries are still very much insensitive to bank competition in the system. I think overall, with this spatial approach to the study of banking, we can really start open up the black box of the Chinese banking system that is very often portrayed as a system that is not changing, unreformed, inefficient, static in the mainstream Western academic literature, which I think is wrong. But more importantly, the set of arguments I try to pursue in my dissertation is that when we look at the Chinese data carefully, I think the Chinese experience suggests that privatization or private entry and foreign entry doesn't necessarily monopolize our path to financial development. Under some scope conditions, with proper constraints and incentives, state actors might be able to achieve comparable outcomes. I know that this might sound economically suboptimal, but as a political scientist, I got to tell you that this might well be the most politically rational and feasible thing to do in many developing contexts. And why that's the case, I've fleshed this out in my dissertation. I hope you will check it out later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Thank you. We're looking forward to reading your book and dissertation, and I really hope it's very interesting, not only from the standpoint of the Chinese banking system development. Maybe there's something for us as well. So, dear colleagues, dear friends, even though we are working in an unusual format, that we still have to sign a memorandum of BRICS Development Finance Institutions Principles for Responsible Financing. So I suggest we get down to the signing procedure, to the signing ceremony. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the joint document signing ceremony is starting. We are signing the Memorandum of BRICS Development Finance Institutions Principles for Responsible Financing. The document is targeted at mitigating social, environmental, and economic risks in projects that are funded by development institutions. The document is based on OECD and UN principles. Implementation of these principles would give us a chance to create high-quality infrastructure, and we can implement joint projects in BRICS countries and develop trade and investments. The cooperation between BRICS and OECD related to responsible financing will continue in the future. The document has been signed. The signing ceremony is over. Thank you. So, dear friends, dear colleagues, thank you very much. So, this is the end of our chairmanship, and we'll be happy to hand it over to our colleagues in India, and hopefully next year we'd be able to work on this and discuss many other issues. Last year, during the BRICS summit, I had a chance to be there when President Putin was in Brasilia, and we had a meeting with Gustavo, and a principles document with principles was signed. And unfortunately, tomorrow's summit will be in the online format. But I really hope that on behalf of our international interbanking cooperation mechanism, I will report the results of our today's meeting. So I wish you all the best. Stay healthy, and stay healthy. All the best to you and yours. So thank you very much, and see you soon.
خلاص